Shortly afterward, however, something happened that sank deep into Mr. Green's mind. He took the children to the hospital to see Davy's pal Tommy, who had broken his leg. By coincidence, the librarian from the Brooklyn Public Library arrived about the same time on her bedside tour. The boys got really excited about her hospital book truck. The top shelves revolved, and Tommy was able to take his pick of the books without moving in his bed. Davy almost wished he could move in with Tommy. This modern equipment, friends of the library, impressed Mr. Green, too. A few days later, on Joe's birthday, his daddy brought him home a cute little puppy. He turned her over to Joe with the remark, "Maybe this will take your mind off books." The little Dalmatian, whom Joe appropriately named Spots, took their minds off books for a while. Soon, however, she lost her pep, and she wouldn't eat or play. The family was really worried. But Joe came to the rescue. He brought home an armful of dog books from the library. Mother and Mary and Dad all read them at the same time. They'd read a little. Spots came through the crisis all right. Mr. Green didn't say much, but he was impressed. The library had had the answer this time all right. Shortly after, resuming work on his boat, Mr. Green finished the hull and tested it out in the bathtub. Well, the boat floated all right, but only on its side. It kept tipping over. Mr. Green was as upset as the boat. He finally gave up. The next morning, Joe, who had become interested in the boat problem, brought home a library book on model boat building. That evening, he sat reading the book when his father suddenly took notice of it. He glanced at it, found something that caught his attention. He started off with it. Joe protested, but his father shook him off and headed for his room. A few minutes later, there was a commotion in the bathroom, and there was the boat, sailing around in the tub, with Joe and his dad and Spots applauding. But the thing that finally made a real library booster of Mr. Green happened one day when he mislaid an important book of out-of-town addresses. A big deal was at stake, and he had to get in touch with a certain man in Minneapolis. Like many a man in a tight situation, he appealed to his secretary. She knew a thing or two. "Go to the business library," she told him. "It's only a few blocks away."
I went there right off. Funny, I had never been there before, though I'd passed it 100 times. I asked the librarian for the Minneapolis telephone directory. He got it in no time from a section filled with telephone books of all the big cities. I discovered they have financial services and business publications of all kinds, too. I located my man's address quickly. The librarian told me with a smile, "You could have got the information from us by telephone." What a numbskull I was, not to have used that library long ago.
That same week, Mrs. Green, listening to the library's book review program on the air, was prompted to join one of its book discussion groups. These are often as follows. Mrs. Green found it very stimulating. For some time, she'd been a patron of the Central Library's Art and Music Division. Recently, she borrowed on her card a framed reproduction which she has now hung on the living room wall. She may keep it for as long as 3 months. The record lending service is an old story to Mrs. Green. Mary has borrowed so many from the collection of more than 10,000, including everything from classics to jazz. But the day Mrs. Green was in to borrow a framed painting, she saw for the first time teenagers listening to records through earphones. One of the girls seemed to be listening to some dreamy piece. The other, perhaps, to bebop. One afternoon, Mr. Green met the chief librarian, Mr. St. John. Mr. Green had gone to the Central Library for a community meeting. After a short talk on the top floor,
About 100 persons work there daily. The job of selecting books, ordering, and checking them occupies much of this manpower. Then comes cataloging, the classifying and preparation of books. Here they have an use. We move down the line watching each pair of hands do its job, fast and sure. Some do stamping, some paste on the card pockets. Others wrap the books in plastic covers. These protect the colorful jackets, the books look better, and last longer. By the time the line gets through with the book, it is ready to be put on the shelf of the library that ordered it. Another eye-opener was the Central Registration Department. Here they have the most modern equipment. There are swivel chairs gliding along tracks to speed the clerks from one end of the files to the other. They need equipment like that to handle the records of more than 750,000 library users. That's equivalent to the 10th largest city in the U.S. Our guide told us that nearly 8 million books were circulated last year. He gave us copies of a little folder. Among other things, it proved to me that our public library is no stuffy old institution, but a very live one.
It was only a few days after his visit that the newly converted Mr. Green spoke about the library with even more pride in his voice.
My wife asked me to stop at the neighborhood library on the way home for a book she had reserved. I walked up the steps and through the door, and suddenly had the surprise of my life. There was Mary sitting behind the library.
I wanted to surprise Dad.
Well, seeing Mary there working really brought home to me how much the library has meant to all of us. There's little Susie going to library kindergarten and learning to love books. Young Davy seldom misses a story hour and comes home nearly every day loaded with reading matter. Joe is discovering how to... Lately, he's been building an entire chest of drawers out of cheese boxes. Messing up the place a bit, but what's the difference? Mother uses the library for preschool programs as a concert hall, a forum, and a universal information bureau. As for myself, well, I wouldn't have believed it a month ago, but now the library means both pleasurable reading and dollars and cents to me. So you might say that for the Greens, the library is a family affair.
Thousands of people in the largest borough of the largest city use the library, whether through a local branch or by means of the library on wheels or as patrons of the great Central Library. All of them seem to agree with the Greens that the public library is a family affair.